This
We are ready to
conference
go.
will now be recorded.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope that your gall's day is sunny and bright. I am right now in our home office in Branson, and everything's blooming here, and the dogwoods are starting to bloom. So here pretty soon, they're going to be blooming all over Missouri. So we're glad that you all have joined us. We're really excited to introduce our speaker here in just a minute, but it's something that everybody has been requesting, of course, is really some questions regarding SBA and the resources that they have. So we felt like it was best for us to have somebody as the expert come and answer a lot of these questions that you all have. But before we get started, I just want to give you guys a little bit of information on next week's webinar, so you all can push that out to the people that you think needs to hear about it, and hopefully you all will join us as well. So next week's webinar is really Train the Trainer. We've had a lot of questions regarding how is other restaurants doing, how are they doing with their per pickup, how are they doing with employees, etc. So we think it's really good to actually have Train the Trainer with a restaurateur, really explaining their processes, their resources, tips that they can share about, you know, the process that they've gone through and what they have found that have worked. And then the other thing is we're also going to have a boutique owner that is actually working to fulfill needs that are coming in through web and other ways with social media. So we're going to have a boutique owner as well, really sharing what she is finding and how she continues to have some commerce, e-commerce as it is. And also we're going to, within all of that, talk about deliveries and how that's happening also. So we hope you guys join us next Wednesday for Mornings on Main for Train the Trainer. So this morning, our representative is from the Small Business Administration. Lisa Zimmerman is with us. Lisa has vast many years of experience in business loan and micro loan lending. She also wears many hats with SBA, as I was reading her resume. So we're going to have a resume available on our website. But Lisa just shared, she goes, well, we probably need to update that resume. She says she's just running like crazy. And I think all of us can feel that right now. But we're not going to spend too much more time talking on our end, except I want to make for sure you guys are connecting to our website, that we continue to have resources updated there every day. That can help you help your small businesses out there. So make for sure to look at those resources. But without any further ado, we're going to turn it over to Lisa. So we have lots of times for question and answers on the end. So thank you, Lisa, for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. I want to start this morning by saying thanks for taking your time out. I know that everyone is busy trying to figure out how to make this all work. So I appreciate your time today. Hopefully I will be able to answer any questions you have. The programs that have been designed based on the CARE Act and some other acts that have been passed are very fluid. So you may have experienced that your lender tells you one thing one day and one thing the next day, and it's not because you have a bad lender. It's because the information is constantly changing. And the way the government typically works in a situation like this is we design something, when we hit a problem, then we design a solution for the problem and move forward that way. So you're really getting to see the inner workings of how government works, maybe a crash course. So. All right, well, Keith, do you want to take us to our page about the different types of loans? All right, so hopefully this is a web address that, can we share the web address with the group in a chat box or something?
Yes.
So I would encourage you, again, there's lots of information out there. Not all of it is correct. So I would advise you to get information on the loan programs either from SBA.gov And the web page that we're displaying right now, that has all of the loan programs that SBA has available specific to disaster right now. And that's updated lots and lots of times a day. And then also you can get information at the Treasury website, which is treasury.gov. And both of those are going to be the most accurate. They're going to be more accurate than maybe a bank page or a banking association page or a news page, those types of things. So, all right, so let's just dive in. There are 4 new loan programs in regards to the disaster. SBA still has, and I want to make this point up front, it's super important. SBA still has their 7A, 504, and microloan programs available. So those still exist. They are still making those. And there's some benefits of utilizing those if your business is cash flowing right now, which there are still some businesses cash flowing. Okay, so we're not going to start at the beginning. Keith, we're going to start at the EIDL loan advance. It's the second box. And if you want to click, I think it's overview or something. There we go. Okay, so the first resource I would direct you to is the Economic Impact Disaster Loan. This application can be reached online at sba.gov/disaster. There are 2 programs that you're entered into when you make one application. And I've done the application myself. It took less than 30 minutes. I only needed 2 numbers. One was my, one was what I made, and one was what I spent. So those were, it was not a challenging application. That application enters you for the EIDL loan. That is a 30-year note. It is 3.6 or 3.75% fixed interest. If you're a for-profit, if you're a not-for-profit, it's 2.75. The loan is automatically deferred for 12 months. That's no principal, interest, or fees. There are no fees on the loan, no penalty for early payoff. What I tell people is, you know, if your business is really struggling, you're looking at 12 months that you could utilize this funding with no fees or interest at all. And you are always welcome to pay it back before that 12-month mark, and you would pay no interest. If you need to continue using the money, 3.75 at 30 years is still a pretty good rate on money these days. The second thing that this application will do is enroll you in what we call the payroll advance. This can be up to $10,000. It is not an automatic $10,000. I know that a lot of people, that's a misconception out there. And that's a forgivable loan, or basically a grant. So you are entering into, when the 2 numbers they're asking you for, again, and they're going to ask you for gross sales. And I know sometimes that's a confusing term because our accountants look at things, that means something different in our accounting world. But to simplify that down, that's how much money did your business make in 2019? The next box you're going to need to fill in is what was the cost of goods sold. That's everything it cost for your business to run in 2019, whether that's owner's draw or payroll or you know, cell phone bill, insurance, multitude of things, but that's everything rolled into one. What did it cost you to run that business last year? It is going to red flag the SBA if your bottom number is bigger than your top number. That's something to be aware of. Also on that, you are able to, once you've applied, they will notify you, hopefully within about 5 to 7 business days. It really depends on the backlog. They are working through them as quick as possible, but Once they notify you, you have the option to say, yes, I want the forgivable money, which I would highly advise. It's forgivable money. And then you have the option to say, yes, I would also like the EIDL loan. You can say, I would like half of the EIDL loan. I would like, $1,000 of it, or I would like none of it. The EIDL loan and the forgivable advance have no bearing on each other. So you're able to, the only thing you can't do is accept more money than they offer you. The next one I want to talk about, Keith, if we could go back and go to the payroll protection or paycheck protection program. That's the first one. All right, so this is the program that has gotten a lot of press. Excuse me. It is a 24-month loan program. It's at 1% interest. There's no interest. It's deferred for the first 6 months. If you use the funds correctly that you receive, then at the 6-month mark, they would look at how you use those funds, and there's an opportunity for those to be forgivable dollars as well. They're looking at percentages on what you spend on payroll, and I just want to encourage people that this is a program you apply for through your bank. Many of the banks have the applications online. I would encourage you to call your banker and make sure that they have the most up-to-date application online that they want to use. If some of you have tried enrolling in this, your bank may have called you and said, oh, they've updated the application, we need you to redo it. The good news is it's only a 2-page application, so redoing it's not the end of the world, but if you have the opportunity to do the correct one first, then great. So when you close that loan with your banker, which they will do, and the bankers, SBA has granted the banks the ability to accept electronic signatures, which allows for less face-to-face contact. And so when you close on this, there will be an authorization sheet and some information on how you need to document the expenses you pay. I want you to pay very close attention to that. That's how you qualify for the forgivable dollars. If you're not spending those correctly, then you're not going to qualify for the forgiveness. And we're going to see several people with debt at the end of this that they may or may not be able to afford. And that's what we really don't want. Right now, the Paycheck Protection Program is not available for 1099, but as of Friday, they're telling us that it will be. And if you are a 1099, I would tell you not to fill out an application that you find online now, because they are in the process of modifying that application to make sure that it addresses the needs of a 1099 or a contractor, subcontractor situation.
Lisa, I was going to say, can you explain what a 1099 for those of us that don't know?
Sure. So a 1099, someone else is paying you to do a job. Happens a lot in construction. So instead of you being a W-2 worker and your employer paying you, like on payroll taxes and those types of things, they're basically paying you in cash, and it's up to you to claim those on taxes. And you're filing your own expenses. The business isn't claiming expenses for you. You are claiming those yourself. So, let's see. We can come back to that program as well. I would say churches are now eligible. Last week they were not. This week they are. Every day, if your type of business does not fit within the Paycheck Protection Program, I would encourage you to keep checking back, because again, so fluid. The SBA has not stepped out of their box. They've recycled the entire box. So everything has changed. So All right, let's go back to the main page. Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about the Express Bridge Loan Program. And this is the best use of this program, it's a 90-day, I think it can be up to 120 days depending on your bank. It's a bridge loan. It's not meant for you to have forever. At the end of the 90 to 120 days, you are going to need to pay it back. And so it's just meant to be a quick fix. Only banks that have SBA Express designation can make these loans, and they can only make these loans to people that they have a relationship with. So if you have a checking account, a savings account, a mortgage, a business loan, some type of personal loan, any of those scenarios would be considered a relationship with the bank, and the bank would make that note. I will tell you that based on the advance on the EIDL loan, we're seeing not a lot of usage on this Express Bridge Loan product, but if you are desperate for money just immediately for payroll or something like that, then definitely talk to your banker about this. If you're not certain if your banker is an Express lender, you can contact them. Usually if they're not, they will know of another bank that they maybe partner with, or a sister bank that they might refer you to. If all else fails, you are welcome to call us at the SBA. I will tell you that we are receiving over 200 calls a day just from lenders, not even counting small businesses. So we will get your call as quick as we possibly can. The next loan product we want to talk about isn't really a loan product. It's the debt relief. So if any of you out there have an SBA loan, this can be a 7A, a 504, Community Advantage, and a microloan. So that's kind of a new twist. But if you have an existing SBA loan, SBA is going to make your payments for the next 6 months. They will, this will be not a deferment. They're actually going to make the payment. It's going to come off your balance. And this is on top of, some of you may have already got deferment from your bank on an existing SBA loan, or you've got it down to interest only. But this is going to make the entire interest, principal, and fee payment for 6 months for you. And that, again, will come off your end balance. It's a really good deal. Also within this, Keith, if you want to scroll down just a little bit, it talks about if you qualify for a loan now, and I know that microlenders seem to be getting the lion's share right now because it's smaller dollar amounts typically that folks are like, okay, if I could just have this much to get by. But if you take out a new loan, you're approved for an SBA loan prior to September, end of September, I think it's the 21st. And that date may change in the near future. So if you qualify for a loan at this point through SBA, again, they're going to make on a brand new loan, they're going to make your payments for 6 months. So you won't actually start making payments until 6 months into the loan. Now, what you can't do on this is you can't say, I would like I would like an SBA loan for $10,000, and I would like that on a 6-month term. They probably will not be okay with that, but they will amortize that out as normal, and then SBA would pay on that. So that's kind of the programs we have right now. I know there are lots and lots of questions out there. So Keith, if you're okay with opening up for questions, then that's fine with me.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that everybody is muted, so you'll just need to ask your questions in the chat box, and I will take care of getting those to Lisa. Lisa, we'll start with a question from Scott that says, does the SBA count owner draws that are not part of the actual payroll in the expenses?
The answer is yes. On the EIDL loan, you'll need to just include that in cost of goods sold. On the PPP loan, your lender will guide you as to where they want that owner draw on the application, but typically it is just going in as a part of payroll.
Okay. Scott, if that didn't answer your question or you have a follow-up, just put it in the chat box and we can do a follow-up. So Carolyn asked, for the $10,000 advance, I heard it was calculated at $1,000 per person in the business up to $10,000. Is that true?
At this point, the way that it has been calculated has changed. They've actually changed the application itself. I think like we're on version 17. So at this point, we don't have, I know this will sound crazy, but we don't have a true picture of how they're calculating that. Each of those advances are coming out. It is based on payroll, but we're not sure what the calculation is today. I apologize.
Lisa, I heard a comment about this is the fastest the SBA has ever, or the federal government has ever reacted to a disaster. Is that why there are so many of these things that are still evolving? Yes,
and if you think about in the past, the only direct loan product the SBA has ever offered is disaster. We've always, our job is really to allow banks to do more lending. So we haven't done a lot of direct lending. And the biggest disaster we've had in the past, and not to minimize these, but maybe a tornado hits 4 or 5 states, or a hurricane hits 4 or 5 states. But we have all 50 states plus 5 territories, and within the first 8 hours of the EIDL loan, when only Washington and California could apply, we had 20,000 applications in the first 8 hours. So our capacity, that's why things are ever changing, because we put something in the place and we say, ooh, that really is not working for a certain amount of people, and we want to be able to include those people. So we just keep changing things, but I've only witnessed the programs become more expansive. So it isn't that people are being taken off, that they can't apply. What we're seeing is bigger payout and more people eligible as the changes take place. And our SBA group, I mean, 7 days a week, really 24 hours a day. So really trying to get this out to everyone.
Sure.
Qualifies.
So I have a question that says, if you have completed the EIDL as a nonprofit and know that it was sent incomplete, can you resubmit?
Yes, you can. You can't, unfortunately, the way the system is set up, it's crashed several times. Again, I'm sure it's due to just to the volume of people that it's trying to accommodate. But since the application has changed so many times, you're able to go in and do a new application. You will not be able to enter your old application number and go back to that application. Also, once you get a confirmation number, you're not going to be able to go in and check. A lot of people are frustrated by this, but we've just got to be patient. The system is trying to handle the weight of all the applications. If we had everyone applied coming back in and checking that application, it would crash immediately. So we're just not able to handle that volume.
Okay. I'm going to take a question from Facebook yesterday. One of our directors can't be on the call, but she said a lot of her businesses have questions about the FTEs.
Okay. Can she be more specific? Like, what is an FTE, or what, how, if you've let them go and you brought them back, or you haven't brought them back, or?
She didn't explain. Her second question was, hopefully they'll also put the rollover from SBA to PPP for businesses too. It's taken a little bit of research to wrap my mind around this. Does that make sense to you?
Can you read it one more time?
Hopefully they can also put the rollover from SBA to PPP for businesses too.
Okay. I would need more clarification. I'm sorry.
Okay. Here's another question. It's my understanding is that the PPP works by allowing employers to use the funds for payroll, health insurance premiums, rent, mortgage interest, and utilities in order to keep or bring back their employees. The loan will be forgiven if the employer keeps their employees for at least 8 weeks. The question is, if the employer has already laid off those employees before collecting or getting the PPP, and the employees collected unemployment for a few weeks, is the loan still forgivable? If the employee declines to come back, can the funds be used for another employee?
Okay, so yes, you can bring them back. Yes, if you have an employee that doesn't want to come back, you can fill that position because it's your business is still needing staff. We are being told as of yesterday that unemployment, at least for the state of Missouri, I want to make clear, unemployment is different from state to state. So, but unemployment for the state of Missouri and for Kansas is not going to cause a conflict with any of these SBA products. They are not going to they're not going to compare against each other, and they won't have an effect on each other.
So then related to that question is, are businesses penalized or is the forgiven amount decreased if an employee quits during the 8-week covered period? Could the business use the amount for that employee's payroll to cover their replacement, I'm assuming another employee, without penalty?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not going to, folks, say, oh, you had John Doe and Sally Doe and Jack Doe, and now you have Peter, Paul, and Mary. So they're not going to look at that for you. They just want to see that, you know, obviously, if you can bring back your employees that you had, that's going to be better for your business because you're not going to have to be training during this time. But if you can't bring back those employees, then you can hire new employees.
Okay.
You can't hire, I want to clarify, you can't hire additional employees. Your numbers have to stay, you know, you can't have 10 employees going into this and 20 on the other side saying you paid payroll too. They'll be savvy to that. They'll catch on that. Okay,
good to know. Another question, a ton of questions coming in. When does the interest start for these products?
And the interest on the EIDL is going to start at the end of 12 months on the loan portion, not the forgivable portion. There won't be interest on the forgivable portion. On the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, it will start at the end of 6 months if they are not forgiven. If they're forgiven, then there won't be a payback on that.
Okay. Many people are wondering if the PPP or unemployment is better, especially hair salon employees, etc. How would you advise them?
I think that's going to be a personal decision. You know, depending on how much you can get. I would just want to say, as I've spent years doing business counseling, this is a really great opportunity if you do not to work on the infrastructure of your business. I know that a lot of people are stressing. I've also done a lot of economic and development and social work in my past. One of the most valuable lessons I learned is you can't just constantly be stomping out the fire. You have to stop and take a look at where the fire's coming from. So in regards to that, you know, this is a great time for you to step back and work on your business instead of working in your business. one of the things involved in that is making sure that you have a reliable bookkeeper or accountant. I've had many businesses say to me, well, we can't afford that. I would argue that no matter how big your business is, you can't afford not to have a second set of eyes looking at your financials. And I have in over 20 years in the business, I have seen very less than I can count on one hand, businesses that didn't make back the money that they spent on a bookkeeper or a CPA in the long run. So
That's great advice. Yep.
Just utilize a bookkeeper, utilize an accountant, you know, folks, it's time to, again, we're recreating the wheel here. And so if finances are an issue, look at bartering. What business does what services does your business supply? Maybe you can trade with a bookkeeper, maybe, you know, be creative, but definitely that's a question for your accountant or bookkeeper, if that's which is going to be better.
Yeah. All right. Candace asked, where do political subdivisions stand?
Right now, they are not a qualifying business.
Okay. Is there a resource available currently that details the forgiveness process of either the PPP or the EIDL?
On the EIDL, it's labeled as forgivable. So, and there's no interest rate tied to it at all. So that's pretty clear cut that that's not to be repaid. As far as the PPP, there's a limited amount of information on the application. Lenders are also asking that question. They'd really like more clarity on how it can all be forgivable. And they're promising us that we will have that by the end of the day today.
Okay. The requirement to obtain a loan must include the loan being needed to continue operations during the COVID-19 emergency. What are the criteria that a business or organization must meet in order to satisfy this qualification?
Okay, on the PPP?
It doesn't signify which one it's referring to.
Okay, on the EIDL, once you qualify for the loan and you get the forgivable part, then you know, on the loan part itself, there's nothing else you have to prove. You have the option to use the money for 30 years, or you can pay it back in 12 months. You can pay it back in 2 months. That one's not an issue with it. On the PPP, we are still looking for very clear cut, and I don't blame lenders and borrowers. You know, we want to make sure what we're getting into. We are kind of going into that program blind, but again, they're promising us by the end of the day today to have clearer guidance on exactly what would make it a forgivable product. So.
Okay. One pertaining to nonprofits. Several nonprofits are applying for the $10,000 advance that have no payroll, rent, etc. Are they eligible for the advance?
They are eligible for the advance, and what I want to remind, that is on the EIDL, on the advance program. The way it's worded is total sales, and then cost of goods sold. So any monies you're paying out as a not-for-profit, you still may be renting a building. You still may be, you have to keep the lights on. You have to keep your phones on. Your, if you have only volunteers and no one's getting paid, and you don't have any expenses, then I'm not sure why you would apply for the loan, because the loan it's not meant to replace lost contracts or lost sales or lost donations. It's meant to cover, the EIDL is meant to cover costs that you're going to still be incurring to keep that business up and running.
Okay. And then related to that, but on the PPP side, This came actually from a national Main Street question, which I'm sure some of our listeners are interested in. Since no one owns a 501c3, how are they answering that question on the PPP application?
The principal is going to be the non-for-profit organization itself. So it won't have a person's name as principal. The lenders are aware of how to handle that issue for the non-for-profit. So they'll be, it will just be the name of the organization. The really great thing, or one of the great things about the PPP program is that it does not require a personal guarantee of any kind. The collateral up to 25,000, no collateral is required. Beyond 25,000, they are only looking at the business assets. If you have a lot of equity in your home, they're not going to touch that. So that's a really nice deal. I would doubt that we will ever see that in lending again. So.
Okay, take advantage now. Still have quite a few questions coming in. We still have plenty of time, so go ahead and get more questions in there if you have them. Here's the next one. Lisa, what is the timeline for getting funding from your bank once you've completed the approval process for the PPP?
It is going to vary based on the backlog of your bank, but I know that even within the first day, they had several $1 billion out. So they're doing it as quick as they can. There's some incentive for banks to do it. The banks are getting a fee for processing these folks. So this is helping your local banks stay alive as well during this time, because it's very difficult for them to do any other type of lending. So SBA is giving them processing fees for these. And so it behooves them to move the money out as quick as they can and go to the next application.
And that's a great point you made, Lisa, and I think you did reference that at the beginning of your presentation too, is go to your local bank, those folks that you know that are your neighbors, because they are going to get that processing fee. So again, as we're all thinking local through this crisis, and those local businesses helping get us through that, your banks are in the same boat, so utilize those folks within your community. Next question, are you aware of any funding within SBA or the CARES Act for 501c6 organizations?
I would check as of Friday back with the banks for the PPP program, and I would encourage you to check back as well on the EIDL either Friday or Monday. Again, this program's so fluid. We're trying to get everyone in, and I know that's an area that they're looking at.
Okay. This one's related to churches. Some churches operate under the 501c3 of like their parent organization, like the Southern Baptist Convention. Are they able to apply if they do not have their own 501c3?
If they're operating under a 501c3 of a bigger organization, it would be up to that bigger organization to apply on behalf of all of their entities. We've had that question a lot. We're a church, but we don't have a 501c3 structure. You're not eligible if that's the case.
Okay. What is the timeline for the $10,000 advance once you've submitted? This person applied over a week ago and hasn't heard any further.
I completely understand. You should be hearing any day now. We had some of those go out in as quick as 8 hours at the beginning of the program. But again, we only had 2 states involved at that time. Now we have all 50 states and the 5 territories. So there is a backlog. They're trying to work through those. And literally SBA has taken on, we have revamped everyone's roles, and so we have a lot of people processing loans right now.
Okay, next question, Jillian, can any of these be used to pay building leases?
Yes, they can. If you're leasing a building, then that would be looking at same as rent or mortgage.
Okay. Regina asked that there's an LLC owned and worked by the spouses. They use lots of temp employees, but not on formal payroll, under $600 a year each. Paid hourly and tips and workers' comp, what can be considered for PPP? No draw for the owners. Everything goes back to growing the business.
Okay, so I would wait until Friday to apply because you have those temp employees would probably, but if you're paying workman's comp, then I'm assuming that's an employee you're claiming on the taxes as well. So you should be able to include those employees. You would just want to do some work with your lender to get those percentages right, so they're not lending you more than, they're not going to get your amount so high that it's not going to be forgivable. It's kind of the caveat of this. So if you just put down, oh, we have 12 employees, but maybe they only work 10 hours a week, that's definitely going to skew your calculations. So I would advise to speak with your lender about how to handle that. They are getting training. Actually, they got some last night. They're getting additional today on how to handle those situations.
Okay, great. We have quite a few business owners on our webinar today. Here's one from Chris, says he's a sole proprietor. Is there a program for this type of business?
Yes, you can apply now for EIDL and PPP and the advance. Yes, you
Okay.
qualify for everything.
Great. That answers his next question too, which would he qualify for the EIDL? So Gayla says, many of our Main Street organizations are a 501c3 and they spend much of the income over the year. Will they be penalized?
No. I want to make sure I understand that question right. You're saying, are you referring, Gayla, to some things are more seasonal, so it wouldn't be touched in the next 8 weeks, or?
What, Lisa, what I'm saying is many of our nonprofits, they're for community benefit. And so everything that they bring in, they put right back out. So at the end of their P&L, it doesn't show that they ever have much income just sitting there. And so I was just making for sure that they, as being a nonprofit and everything they bring in, they put right back into the community, that they wouldn't be penalized for that.
There are some expensive, or there are some things like if you are, we'll use the example of, I'm a 501c3, but one of our main objectives is we raise funds and donate those to a food pantry. You're not going to be able to use those donated dollars as an expense.
Okay. David has his own business too. He says he's been paying his employees a portion of their normal weekly hours to keep them on the payroll despite being shut down. Assuming he receives the PPP funding soon, would he use those funds for payroll and increase that back up to their normal weekly pay?
First, I want to say good for you, David. Way to go. That's awesome. Yes, he can increase back up to the full amount. And also when he's applying for the PPP, he needs to let his lender know of that situation. And there may be a way to wrap some of those funds he already had going out into the loan as well.
Lisa, could he go back and back pay them for the full amount instead of just the portion of their normal weekly?
It will be up to the lender if they're comfortable with that, but most of them are, and that's kind of what I was referring to.
Okay.
So,
okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of our questions on the chat function. Let's give folks another minute or two to ask some additional questions. Lisa, what are a lot of the other major questions that you're getting or fielding that maybe we haven't covered here this morning?
I apologize, Keith. I've answered so many questions in the last couple of weeks. I'm like, oh, a lot of folks are concerned about, we want to make sure this is forgivable. I totally understand that. We don't know how long this is going to last. What What I want to encourage people is that if you don't get your PPP application in today, you're not blown out of the water. A lot of people are worried the program's going to run out of money. The president and Congress are already putting stops in place to try and get us additional funds for in case these funds do run out. But I will tell you, I'm part of the Kansas City District Office, and we cover 89 counties in eastern Kansas and western Missouri. Since 1953, we've put out $7 billion in SBA guarantees, and that's over, 70 years. So this is $349 billion. I know everybody's applying, but don't panic if you're a 1099. There's still going to be funds there for you.
I have a question. In my local community, we had a business that just opened up in February. So they wouldn't have a lot of past records. Could they still take advantage of these programs?
They can. I'm going to tell you that it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to verify and get funds, but they definitely, I would encourage them to apply. I will say too, startups aren't excluded from any of these programs. I mentioned at the beginning of the call about the micro lenders and like our regular 7A loan program. If you're a startup or you're an existing business, then I would, and you're needing money for growth or development of your company, then I would apply for one of those traditional loan programs. The disaster loan products are not designed to fulfill that kind of need. Great example, I have a small business here in the town I live in, Bolivar, Missouri, got a call center. Of course, there are a lot of companies that are going to be utilizing call centers now instead of face-to-face representatives. So they're looking at growth potential, and that's a great example of a business that needs to apply either for a microloan, depending on the size. Microloans go up to $50,000. Community Advantage are $50,000 to $250,000, and then 7A products, 504. So.
Okay. We have another question for a sole proprietor. Is the EIDL forgivable?
The EIDL is not forgivable. There is a forgivable advance, and that portion would be, they would be eligible for that portion.
Regina asks, on the EIDL, it asks for gross and then cost of goods sold, but her accountant actually gave the cost of goods sold, not other expenses. What does she need to do?
She needs to add in the other expenses, and that's what I mentioned at the first of the call. It is very confusing language, folks. I know that. I looked at it myself and I was like, cost of goods sold. I mean, this is only one small portion, but the clarification and guidance we've gotten, you only get two numbers to put in there: how much you make, how much you spend. Think of it like that instead of in the accounting terms for cost of goods sold.
Okay. Here's a great question regarding startups. If they were planning on opening in April, but the opening date was pushed because of the disaster, would they be eligible for disaster funds, or should they go for a 7A or a microloan?
Technically, startups are eligible for the disaster loans, but if you're not open yet, I don't think you. I think it may be not as much funding as you would want or need. I would encourage you to look at either a 7A or a microloan for that. Again, we're not discouraging anyone from applying for the disaster loans, but if your business isn't open yet, the number of employees you had on February 15th, you were paying 0. So that's going to be what they're going to help you with.
Okay. And back to Regina about where the accountant misunderstood the cost of goods sold. They just need to resubmit a whole new application. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Next question is how can the EIDL be amended to include all expenses? So we answered that through Regina's question. They would just need
Yes.
to go back and resubmit it. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no option for modification, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before we let Lisa get on to her next webinar or go-to meeting or Zoom conference call? Anybody else? Any last minute questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. I will remind everybody that we did record this, and so we will put this on our, the recording of this on our website at momainstreet.org. We have a COVID-19 resource page, so we'll include it there. You can go back and watch it and get additional information. We'll also put a link to this SBA website that Lisa referred to this morning and utilized. There's a lot of great information there. Lisa, one last question I'm going to give you, and then we're going to close it out with Gayla. What are the criteria for the Community Advantage loan?
So the Community Advantage loan, the best way I can describe it, and this will not be technical at all, is if a microloan and a 7A loan had a baby together. So it's going to be a little less stringent on the requirements than a 7A loan. So if you couldn't qualify for a 7A loan, then the Community Advantage would be a good fit to get you up into those higher dollars. It does go up to 250,000. The microloan goes up to only to 50,000. So if you're needing in that gap, but you're not strong enough for a 7A, then I would encourage you to look at a Community Advantage loan. On the SBA.gov website, if you type Community Advantage in to the search, then it can notify you. I know this call is in different states, so it will let you know where your closest Community Advantage lender is. If you're in Illinois, Missouri, or Kansas, then Justine Peterson is going to be your Community Advantage lender. So.
All right. Lisa, thank you very much. That was wonderful, great information. You answered a ton of questions, which is very valuable. So we appreciate you giving us some time this morning. Gayla, you want to close us out?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. On our chat side, we can see, and on my text, many people have said this has been great. So they've said thank you, and I say all the thank you goes back to you guys. Thank you for being such great responders, Lisa, and sharing this information with us. It's been extremely helpful. So as Keith said, this information will be out there so we can continue to tap in it. I'm sure that as things change, we may ask you to come back and do another one of these. So I hope that you will do that for us because it's ever changing, it seems like. But we're trying our best to stay on top of it. So those that are still with us, you guys can check out our resources on our webpage. We will work to keep those updated as much as possible. And then also don't forget about next week's webinar is really train the trainer on restaurant owner and also a boutique owner and how they're working through these times to stay in business. We thank all of you guys. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.